Oh, we got somebody. Okay, we got people popping in now. Yes. Okay, what's that about? That was it? We good?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, call me if you need
Sorry,
anything.
yeah.
Yeah, you're totally fine. Don't worry about it. That's why we're here. Just call if you need anything else.
I want to do just a couple minutes because the
Yeah,
lunch is just getting out. Yeah. Are my slides up too?
Yes. Are you the first one to
Yes.
present? Yeah. Check
Amanda Slottick.
this one.
Yeah, Slottick, Amanda. Yep, right there. I think I'm listed first. I guess I don't know.
Yeah. Probably we can. The order is fine. These are yours.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
And there is a mic for the online person. Okay.
Thank you.
And there's a
Beautiful. Thank you. All right, before I get started, I do have printouts of the script and the slides. And the script has both small print and large print, so you can take whichever version you prefer. I'll just pass them around. I'll just start them up here if you wouldn't mind just starting to pass. Oh, perfect, thank you. I do just ask that if you access the script that you don't share it because I get a little salty. So this is one of those that I'm not going to include the actual script in my promotion file, which has kind of been the case with a lot of my presentations lately for some reason. So I mean, people will probably continue to come in and that's fine, but we'll go ahead for the sake of time, get started. I'm going to be presenting fearlessness, sustainability, and adaptability. I'm just going to minimize this here real quick so we can see all the slides. There we go. In transition, Baby WAC and the future of small writing programs. My name is Amanda Slottick, pronoun she, her. I put the clicker up here. This is going great. I'm the composition coordinator and an associate professor of English at the University of Nebraska at Kearney. Okay, I went through all that. People on Zoom, I assume that you can hear me, but please give me an indication if you cannot. This presentation, okay, great. The recording's awesome, working, awesome. So this presentation explores a transitional period in my university's writing program through the lens of Chris Tice and Carol Rutz's 3 WAC ideals of fearlessness, sustainability, and adaptability. While small writing programs may not have the resources to implement full WAC programs, incorporating WAC elements into existing writing program structures can contribute to the long-term success and sustainability of these programs amid budget cuts, declining enrollments, program changes, and the ongoing challenges to the liberal arts and higher education at large. My presentation will have 2 major sections. First, using the 3 ideals as a framework, I'll discuss how, in response to institutional transitions and programmatic changes, my program adapted some of these central ideas behind writing across the curriculum without actually having much influence over said curriculum. I'll then close by sharing some potential implications for small writing programs, especially at institutions that can't sustain a full WAC program. In their 2021 IWAC plenary and subsequent article in the WAC journal, Tice and Rutz describe how the WAC ideals of fearlessness, sustainability, and adaptability have informed the 50-year history of WAC, as well as their own teaching and administrative careers. Speaking to the first ideal, fearlessness, Tice notes, fearlessness means having many awkward conversations with administrators and chairs already burdened by time and money woes. It means acknowledging our own ignorance of others' expertise and listening to and keep listening to and learning from people across an institution whose views on students and the goals of education differ from our own. WAC fearlessness always means asking others to come out of their own comfort zones, even as we must do the same. I know that's a long quote, but it's a good one, so I included the whole thing. This applies a bit differently to my institution. The University of Nebraska at Kearney, where I am, does not have a WAC program. In fact, it has a bit of a complicated history with WAC and writing requirements in general. So on the slide here, you see a graphical representation of the timeline of writing requirements in our general education program, which I'm about to explain in more detail. We used to have a sort of WAC program that required students to take one specially designated writing intensive course in a discipline of their choosing. In addition to the 2-semester first-year writing sequence offered by the English department. From what I can gather from committee meeting minutes still available on the university website, this program ran from approximately 1997 to 2013. There are very few English department faculty still around who were there during that time, so getting information about this program firsthand is kind of difficult. But at that point, I'm told it was ended via a unilateral decision by our senior vice chancellor, a former biologist. I joined the faculty in 2017, so I don't have any firsthand knowledge of the conversations that took place at that time. However, I was here in 2021 when this same senior vice chancellor made the unilateral decision to cut the second course in our 2-semester first-year writing sequence from the general education curriculum without so much as a conversation with the Gen Ed committee, the English department, or me as WPA. So I'm guessing the conversation on this first decision was also minimal. So what I refer to as our baby WAC program emerged from the 2021 decision, this third one in the graph, and a conversation in the lead up to it. To give a bit more context, the situation was part of a larger initiative to reduce the number of general education credits needed for graduation. While our second comp course, English 102, is still offered every semester and is still required for some majors, such as education and health sciences, and of course, English, it is no longer part of the general education curriculum and therefore not required for all students. English 102 is/was the course devoted primarily to research and documentation and citation conventions. And when the Gen Ed committee was tasked with redesigning the curriculum before English 102 was cut, so when the curriculum design was still being negotiated, I attended several of their meetings to advocate for the importance of our 2-semester sequence remaining a 2-semester sequence. I'm stepping out of my comfort zone as a then new and untenured WPA. And for the record, I did end up convincing the committee. It was just the senior vice chancellor who remained unconvinced to keep the 102 requirement. In one such meeting, a committee member and faculty member in chemistry ended up arguing for retaining the 2-course writing sequence based on the fact that he wanted his students to be able to write well, but he lacked the ability and desire to teach them to do so. We could certainly go down a rabbit hole with that statement. I could get really off track here. It's clearly evidence that right now is not the time to try to introduce like a real WAC program. But for the purposes of this conversation, this is a moment that resulted in me turning what, and it was really a painful, frustrating situation into what Kimberly Gunter calls a kairotic moment. Paul Hanstedt argues that transitional moments in general education curricula can provide opportune moments for WPAs to fold the benefits of WAC into larger discussions and debates, ultimately leading to long-term benefits. However, given the suddenness of the eventual decision to do away with the 102 requirement, we didn't have time to respond in a way that was as thoughtful, long-term, or as strategic as we would have liked. Instead, approaching the situation with fearlessness, or at least as little fear as possible, meant constructing something we could put in place immediately, something more tactical. Fernando Sanchez and Daniel Kenzie describe tactics as strategies that, quote, do not promise anything over a long period of time. They are opportunistic, temporary, and lack what Michel Desserteaux refers to as a proper locus, end quote. Since English 102 could still be required for specific majors, the tactic became to convince departments to add the course to their major requirements. And given the fact that students were now getting some research instruction in English 101, since they had to get it somewhere, we used this opportunity to reframe English 102 as a special topics course on writing and research in the disciplines, Baby WAC, though perhaps Baby WID is a more accurate label, with separate sections designed for different fields, in addition to our previously offered course, which is now labeled Writing and Research in College. So you can see here through fall 2021, it was just one course with one label, English 102, Academic Writing and Research. Starting in spring 2022, just because it takes a while for everything to get pushed through and into the catalog. It's now called Special Topics, Academic Writing and Research. And then we can actually put the labels into the catalog so students know when they're signing up, which section they're signing up for. So the general sort of topic list ones are called Writing and Research in College. We also offer Research and Writing for Communication Professionals, Science and Technical Writing. Not all of them are disciplinary based. We do give the instructors options to offer topics that are just based on an interest area. We had a really interesting one offered by one of our former graduate assistants who has since graduated on Faith and Belief. She did a lot of work with religious rhetoric. And we've had a few one-off offerings as well. So these are just a few examples of ones that we have been particularly successful or that we have offered more than once. But instructors have the ability to offer others as well. With the help of my then department chair, I spent the better part of an academic year emailing the faculty listserv, meeting with our campus advising office, and having those awkward conversations with cash-strapped, overworked department chairs that Tice refers to. Essentially, my job was to sell the benefits of these new disciplinary-focused sections of English 102 and argue for the course's place in their major's required coursework. Or ideally, to build an invitational partnership, borrowing from Fang et al., where the writing program would partner with these home departments to develop courses that would meet their students' needs and their program's needs. So for example, the Research and Writing for Communication Professionals course was co-developed between the instructor of that course and faculty in the communications department, but is taught by somebody within the English department. Which leads me to the next point, sustainability. Tice identifies funding issues and faculty and administrative resistance as common roadblocks to the sustainability of WAC initiatives. While we didn't get much administrative resistance at this stage, aside for some perplexing obstacles thrown up by the registrar's office, what we got was a general lack of interest. Although perhaps that isn't fair, or that phrasing isn't unfair. More accurately, every department was dealing with their own response to the general studies program changes, plus their own separate initiatives and concerns at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Even if they cared about writing in the abstract or agreed that their students needed more writing support, it was difficult to get that initial meeting with faculty, and even more difficult to get them to partner with us in developing these special topic sections. Moreover, the sections we have gotten on the books haven't been able to sustain enrollment. We've had to cancel sections of our science and technical writing course due to low enrollment, and we no longer offer our business and technical our business writing topic for the same reason. The first offering of the section designed for communication professionals was fully enrolled with students in non-communications related majors. There are several complicated reasons for this, many of which relate to the advising process. We're working on improving our communication and building our strategic partnership with the new student advising program. And the communications department has indicated that they think they've resolved their issue, so there is more hope for sustainability on that front. Since we're not a true WAC program, we face the additional sustainability roadblock of course coverage. Prior to implementing our tactical emergency baby WAC program, we had one upper level technical writing course on the books, which had never been actually taught. We don't have a technical writing specialist. Both the upper level course and the 102 technical writing section were co-developed by the one other Rhet Comp professor in the department and a literature professor who used to work in engineering. While they are both qualified to teach technical writing, and our lecturer who teaches the communications course does have a journalism background, these instructors are also responsible for other content areas. We're a small department, so when we assign an instructor to a special topics 102 section, there's a good chance we're pulling them from a course that only a few instructors, or perhaps only they, can teach. Relatedly, there are only so many disciplines our department would be able to offer sections for, at least in a meaningful way, where the instructor can speak from a place of real disciplinary expertise if demand for topics were to increase, and if we continue in our current position of not really having much support or interest in a wider WAC program. The third point that Tice and Rutz discuss in their keynote is adaptability, which, as Tice notes, is key to sustainability. I'm not going to spend as much time on this, as tactical approaches like baby WAC are born of adaptation. In this case, adaptation to curricular changes. So the degree to which we're able to adapt really has informed every point in the discussion so far. But I will briefly note one additional challenge posed by the small size of our campus and our program. The fact that we have one WPA, hi, and I'm almost entirely responsible for this program, in addition to my other WPA and faculty responsibilities. Olyanek et al.'s recent chapter in Adapting the Past to Reimagine Possible Futures on the nuances between WAC and WPA professionalization is fantastic, and I won't get into the details because you should read it if you haven't already. It's free on the WAC Clearinghouse. But suffice it to say, I was not trained for a WAC position, not that I was super trained for my WPA position. And for this program to really be adaptable and sustainable, it needs more detailed attention than I am able to provide. I did not think this through. From someone with the time and the training to provide it. While we've had 2 failed Rhet Comp searches in a row, it's getting increasingly difficult to justify searching for a position that can support this initiative without the enrollment numbers to justify it. In my remaining time, I want to talk about some potential implications of this story and these ideas for other small writing programs. As is probably clear, I'm still working through what this program will look like going forward, and I honestly don't know whether or how Baby WAC will survive whatever changes and challenges lie ahead, changes that include budget shortfalls and as yet undefined structural changes. This is one implication or benefit that I found by examining my situation through a WAC lens. It highlights what a successful program needs, where we're falling short, and when needed, how to adapt to failures and false starts. While it's not necessarily a goal of mine at this point for us to adopt a WAC program, though there is a push among some English faculty for us to advocate for a return to the writing intensive course model. Thinking about what we have as a version of WAC has been a helpful framing as we continue to develop and advocate for the program. It also makes Baby WAC easier to explain and justify to those outside the writing program. I'm actually surprised at how many people, even if they don't have a solid understanding of what WAC is, are at least somewhat familiar with the acronym, and that could be like a starting point for conversation. The final implication is one that seems obvious when I say it out loud, but it doesn't feel obvious, or at least it didn't until recently. The WAC umbrella is or can be bigger than we think. I don't consider myself a WAC scholar, and I'm not part of a WAC program. This is my first IWAC and the first I've ever considered applying to. Frankly, I'd always considered the thought of running a WAC program to be a little intimidating, and I kind of still do. I didn't turn to WAC scholarship until I was in full crisis mode, trying to solve the problems thrown at us by the curriculum change, when I realized partway through this thing that this thing I had in mind was maybe a bit WAC adjacent. Engaging more directly with WAC scholarship helped me think through this program in a new way in terms of strategic partnerships, how I could position myself as the champion of this program, and how I can hopefully lay the foundation for something sustainable. There's already so much great outreach and advocacy work being done by organizations like WAC Go and the WAC Clearinghouse. So much of the scholarship is so easily accessible, and it's so easy to find what you need, like what you're specifically looking for. And I'm excited to think about ways it can be adapted for any campus. Even more can be done to increase collaboration between campuses with WAC, without WAC, and with something in between. I do have my really small print source list. The slides are on in the Dropbox, and I'm happy to send my references to anybody who wants them. All right, thank you.
Hello. Thank you for coming. Thanks for being awake. I know I ate a lot of food. It's free, so that's what happens. I'm Kristen Welch. I just moved here to South Carolina about 2 years ago. And I became the Writing Center director last fall. And so we've gone through this massive changes. We only have about 1,100 students. It's a small private Christian college. And we've had dramatic changes. So about 4 years ago, before I showed up, they decided they're going to start offering bachelor's degrees. It was a community college until then. That's huge. What else? They did not have an LMS until COVID. No Canvas, no Brightspace, no Blackboard. How do you teach without that? I do not know. I haven't taught without an LMS in a long time. They did not have an online program where a student could maybe earn an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree online. So they hired a director. She's amazing. She's built this wonderful, wonderful program. It is really great. But what a huge change. I mean, in just a few years. So we went from a community college that only taught on-campus courses with apparently very little to no technology to this institution that is offering 4-year courses. And we went from 20 faculty to over 40. So huge, huge changes. Now, most of the faculty who are showing up are just out of their PhD programs. So they might have a few years. I'm old. I've been in the field about 24 years. This is my 3rd full-time position. And I wouldn't have left my last one, but I was teaching at a community college and quite frankly, I got bored. So here I am. There's only so much freshman comp you can teach. At one position, I did run a little writing center. And so I have a little bit of experience doing that. And my first order of business when I came in is that our writing center, guess who works there? Faculty. So 2 of their office hours are spent in the writing center. And guess how they feel about that? Oh, they love it. Oh, yes. And that's why when I said I'm going to get students in there, I became a god. I became a god. No, I'm just kidding. But it does help. So here we are then, and now and kind of some of these huge changes. So I worked with our department chair, and we have what's called an experience program, and we are going to have interns in the fall, student interns. Okay. All right, every semester, if you have a writing center that is staffed by faculty, they don't have the same 2 hours. So one wants to do her hours from 8-ish to 9:28.2 a.m. The other one wants to do them from like 3 to 5, of course, you know, why wouldn't they? So we had these really weird hours. They change every semester, so the students never know when we're open because they're not going to memorize that. There were no online resources for writing. No, the person who was the director of the writing center was the one who drew the shortest straw, you know, like, so I'm the first rec comp person that they have, and I'm super excited, and they keep thinking I might have a mental illness or something's wrong, you know, and I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled. So they didn't track how the center was used. They didn't care who was coming. They weren't trying to develop anything. And that's all fine. They had other interests, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I have no budget. Again, I'm at a tiny school. How am I going to get these students to come? The work study positions are claimed. Not going to happen. So I had to partner up with the internship program that we have. So the students earn college credit, and so they have to do a certain number of hours. They all have to take an internship. So I was lucky to get at least 2. Advantages are that I'm not having freshmen and sophomores, and at our institution, I think our GPA to get in is like 2.0. Very, very, very low. So it's pretty much open access. At my last institution, which was community college, you just had to be breathing. If you're checked in, bounce, you were in. So I'm used to that. I love it. Bring it. But if I get juniors and seniors, then at least they've been in some classes, and I can get some real recommendations. So that's a huge advantage. I also started tracking who visited the center and for what classes. And I asked the faculty, who are enormously wonderful, supportive people, just did a QR code and taped it next to the sign-in sheet and said, well, you just fill out a little report, who came in, what class. And then I gave them a little checklist, like, why were you here? Why were they here? And then an other box, you know. And I discovered that also we were doing both on-campus and online tutoring, but we have like an online tutoring option through a bookstore, and students would get confused, like, did I make an online appointment or an in-person appointment? Don't ask me how this became so confusing, but I got rid of that. So they could just do it through the one thing. And I limited our hours to like 10 to 2. And so we started identifying what resources are needed and which instructors are assigning written work. So kind of interesting. Who's the audience? Who's showing up? 45%, this is according to our own website, are first-gen students. They do not have families with parents who went to college. So this is all brand new. They show up and they're like, we don't really know what to do. It says half are students of colors, more than half are female. I would say most of our students of colors are African-American. I've seen another number, 52% are African-American. We have a small but growing Hispanic population. And like most institutions, we have a lot of trouble getting people to visit the center without teacher encouragement, because again, this is not their norm. Someone named Valerie Pexton wrote an article called "Sometimes It's Okay to Meddle," or how to encourage first-year students to visit the center. And let's see. Oh, they did. I didn't do this. All right. Well, in my mind, I made this slide. Why? Well, they struggle to adjust to the pace of college coursework and often wait too long to get help. And we do have huge, huge struggles because they come in at a huge disadvantage. They have that lower GPA. They don't have the study skills. Some professors at our college require their students to show up. Others have this sort of open door, like if you want to pop in here for 10 minutes, great. It's very difficult if you're already struggling as a student to learn in this really fragmented way, and you don't know what to do or where to go. Some students think of extra help as akin to special ed. They don't want to come because they're afraid. They aren't used to finding resources on their own. They don't follow up on the information they get, and they don't manage their time well and are unable to get to the center during open hours. And of course, when your hours change literally every single semester, that's another. So what are my plans? First of all, we got to do a better job of getting the word out. And we just got an LMS, people. We do have the Facebook for the old fogies. We're going to add Instagram, and we're going to tweet some stuff. That's right. And Pexton suggests that. Definitely social media is one of the easiest ways to reach people. With my new tutors, I'm going to send those fearless leaders into instructor classrooms and have them shamelessly beg students to come. I am going to use old school paper flyers. Believe it or not, our students don't like email. And so just go use a color printer. And there we go. They actually respond to flyers better. I'm going to work with faculty to send tutors into classrooms for help. And in another year or two, I want to see if faculty will let us offer a little workshop like editing, documentation, brainstorming, etc. A good writing center can be a catalyst for developing writing on a campus if built in an intentional way. So I wanted to see what other folks were doing. There's a place called Dixon University, and they have a writing in the discipline or WAC emphasis. And their goals are to integrate it across all the disciplines, emphasizing relationships and differences, to implement, develop, and document effective writing practices, to improve student learning to write for a variety of audiences, and to teach students to write specifically as professionals in their academic field. And like there's a theme here at this conference, reaching the faculty seems to be more important because that's how we reach the students. So those goals come into place. So this last spring, of course, we all know Terry Myers-Zawacki is. She was just on the podium today. Her and Chris Tejas wrote Engaged Writers, Dynamic Disciplines. It's been out a long time. If you haven't read it, it's a really great study, because what they did was they found that we all are using like the same terms. We just mean them differently. But in our minds, hey, it's not a problem. So my goals are that, I discovered through my surveys that the only two departments really assigning writing are business and English. A lot of faculty won't assign writing assignments because they're fighting huge battles trying to get them to learn the content. And the students struggle. So trying to get faculty invested in, interested in learning about writing to learn, how it can help them, low stakes, not focusing on all of the surface features of writing is really been important. So in my workshop that I did, I used some of Myers and Zawacki's really great examples. So I'll go to those in just a second. But I also did a survey of the business students or the business faculty, like how are you assigning writing in your courses? And I found everything from group papers of 12 to 15 pages to quote, light research and financial analysis. So let's see if I'm over here. So steps to building the program. Again, I sent out some surveys. I gave a presentation called The Stuff That We're Already Supposed to Know. And one of the examples that I gave in that workshop was from the Myers and Zawacki book. A political science professor said she assigned compare and contrast and opinion papers. We all know what those are. I mean, that's easy to do, right? Well, she said for her paper, they have to be able to explain political events to constituencies, to understand and address competing interests, and to inform or persuade individuals to take specific actions. They must demonstrate the complex interests that motivate individuals to take political action. Oh, that's not like what I'm doing. So for, a composition class, comparing two definitions of an abstract idea like freedom, completely different. A history class where they compare two events, completely different. A science class comparing two instances of observation, completely different. The audience is different, the purpose is different, the content has to take in class material. After all, what are competing interests to a freshman? What does that mean? So of course they have to learn a lot in order to do that type of writing assignment. So this was really helpful. I also built a LibGuide. I don't know if I can click on this and it'll open. Well, will it? Control click. Did it? Oh. Yes, we want to go to the scary place. Ah, I had good photos made a few years ago and I'm just sticking with them till I run out. And I put up like an instructor resource. And guess how many folks have visited my instructor resources?
Thousands.
I think 5, and one might have been my mother. They don't tell you comes. She's supportive. I put up here, what the benefits are, and there's tons of research on writing to learn activities. A tool for scaffolding knowledge. Benefits, making learning visual, revealing gaps in a student's learning to an instructor. My colleagues are not coming here. They don't have time. I sent out mass emails to my colleagues, here's some cool stuff. Do your students have trouble citing sources? Because I think they do. They come to the writing center. No, they're just not using that particular resource. So it's going to fall on me to do better, to get the word out, to, where'd my thing go? Oh, I thought I was in the emails. You go back to the PowerPoint. Yep, thanks. What did I do? Let's see if this will come up. I did this at another school, my little community college. It was actually enormously successful. We just had, of course, freshmen and sophomore, the pioneer pinnacle. You've climbed to a great height. It's an undergraduate journal. And basically, if it seems readable, I will edit it for you and I will slap your paper in that journal. I want to celebrate writing from every discipline. And when I sent out the call, I had one paper out of the fall semester. It was my friend in the English department, obviously my favorite person now. And spring semester, towards the end, I think I had picked up 2 more. So then I became desperate and shameless, and I started emailing every, professor, and didn't work. But what I finally did was I looked at a presentation list for a research thing that we did in February. Another professor took him to the Upstate Research Symposium, and I emailed the students directly, and I was like, please. So it worked. 16 papers altogether, 2 from business, 1 from biology, 1 from psychology, 1 from art appreciation, and 1 for history. So this fall, we'll have our first edition, and we'll highlight writing across the campus, and we'll raise some awareness. The lady who's working on this with me, we're going to do an award like best paper next spring, and sort of just start rewarding people for, being a part of that. How do I go back to my PowerPoint right here? Okay. This guy, Mike Palmquist, you may have heard of, I don't know. I stole this from somebody who did great work. They taught a workshop online at ASU called Writing to Learn Perks, Prompts, and Plans. It was Lindsay Harding, Director of the Writing Intensive Program, and Rebecca Hallman Martini, Director of the Willis Center for Writing. Fantastic. Tons of people came in and participated from all different disciplines, and I got to be a part of it. It was so great. I loved how they set it up, but she took this from his article and Writing to Learn. The middle one says Writing to Engage, and then of course the third one, you can't see, it says Writing in the Disciplines. I need to explain that to the folks I'm working with as I continue trying to offer faculty workshops every year. We have like a whole faculty development day, so they have to do something. Some of them come and spend time with me. And they like they summarize the types of activities that you might be doing for each one of these. What's next? I don't know. I don't know if we want to do writing intensive courses. I just offered my first workshop. Like I said, we have something called C Cubed, which is mostly we were attending because there was alcohol, but now there's not. We still have snacks, so I'm going. Free food, I'll show up. I asked if we could bring in, the Bean book, the Engaging Activities or whatever the title is. She said, for sure, we can do that. I'm going to do some more surveys. I'm going to survey the students. I'm going to sit down with faculty one-on-one and just do an interview and have a conversation. Again, it's a tiny college. I have time to do that. It's not that big of a hurdle. Some of you guys work at places, you've got millions of people. Bradley Hughes wrote an article, Galvanizing Goals, What Early Career Disciplinary Faculty Want to Learn About WAC Pedagogy. I found that was a really helpful article published in the WAC Journal. And he reminded me that someone advocating for a WAC program has to know proven curricular models for WAC. So I really need to get my ducks in a row before I go too far with this. Also, he did some research. He interviewed 107 people from different disciplines, found that most of them wanted help designing writing assignments. And next, he found they wanted help with writing pedagogy. And third on the list was responding and evaluating writing, which I thought would be at the top of the list. Like, I don't want to do all of this work, but, and another was about exploring learners and learning associated with writing activities. So I'm going to keep those things in mind. I'm going to be respectful. I'm going to individualize what we do for SMC, for our courses, for our students, and I'm going to be collaborative because I really don't think that when you barrel in and shove things down people's throats, they're going to respond very well. And they don't like being preached to, and they don't like being pushed. So if someone wants to join me, fantastic. If they don't, then that's okay. Also, assessment's not the norm at our institution where you would like bring together a bunch of papers and then you'd all assess them and whatever. We just pick out a few papers of our own, give them a 1, 2, 3, or 4, and ta-da, we've performed assessment. I don't know if I'm going to get them to ever perform a real assessment or not. Sometimes you have to just say, hey, I'm not the only person here, I'm not in charge, and let it go, as they say in Frozen. And so maybe I can take a leadership role and help them to see how assessment might be helpful. Maybe it won't. But as Hughes notes in his article, WAC is one of the ultimate long games, and we'll have to be satisfied with incremental progress. So whenever we have time, help. Any ideas you have, I welcome them. All right, thanks.
Do you want to share your screen?
Oh, great.
Yeah. I think that's it.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, good afternoon. My name is Scott Wilson. I am the Writing Across the Disciplines coordinator and an English instructor at Luther College at the University of Regina in Saskatchewan, Canada. I want to acknowledge the land on which Luther College operates, which we call Treaty 4 territory. For years before Canada and Saskatchewan existed, this was the land of the Nihilwak, Anishinaabe, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and it's the homeland of the Métis Nation. These lands remain the occupied home of many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. I'm grateful to be able to work and live on this land and recognize the power and balance that persists between settlers like myself and Indigenous people. Because of that imbalance, I continue to help in any way I can towards truth and reconciliation. Luther College is a small college. It's a federated college as part of a larger institution in Saskatchewan's capital. It's a government town, plenty of Crown Corporation and government workers. We've designed this program in a way that builds writing into classrooms, and I consult with different instructors on collaborations in terms of developing new writing interventions, assisting them in developing new rubrics, assessment tools. We have a podcast studio that we set up in the library that is used to do some sound writing and some multi-modal different types of writing assignments. And so some of what I've been working on is about meaningful writing assignments and activism related writing. So part of our role as professors here at Luther is to do 1/3 teaching, 1/3 research, and 1/3 service, whether that's in the community or otherwise. And so we always have that eye towards community engagement, engaged learning, and the like. So when we think about AODHA, Lerner, and Geller's meaningful writing assignments, they talk about student agency being key, engagement with the instructor, peers, and materials being essential, and also that students find assignments meaningful when that learning connects to previous experiences and perhaps to passions and future aspirations and identities that they have. So is it something that they're interested and passionate about? Can they use it in their future schooling and their future job and in their lives? So part of what we've been doing, and I'll talk about a specific course that I worked with a little bit later, is to have students tap into the power of personal connection, see their writing as applicable, relevant, real world, and connected to their future selves, and to immerse themselves in what they're thinking, writing, and researching, including engagement in processes of writing. So we talk a lot about what John Warner calls like the writer's practice, and focusing on getting students to do what writers do instead of focusing on what he would call writing adjacent activities, just kind of going through the motions of that writing process. To add to this, I've been thinking a lot about Daniel Collins' writing as a resource for student well-being, which I think is a little bit similar in that it roots writers in their worlds and in their programs, in the actively thinking about their learning, but also about the community engaged learning they're doing. This is less about writing as being cathartic or therapeutic, and more about writing as a form of inquiry or as a way to create and sustain identity and community. So Collins says writing becomes a source of social capital and a vital dimension of the building of social connectivity. Writing increases our sense of self as beings in the world and becomes a resource for living and for well-being. So We're talking a little bit about, empowerment here of students gaining a certain level of confidence or agency. This work requires the rumblings of purpose, engagement, and discernment. It produces a sense of order and control and the agency I was talking about. So sometimes particularly in first year courses, depending on their educational background before they get to us, students are feeling like a little bit desperate about, their first year English class, for example. And so running across the disciplines at Luther, we're trying to make sure that students are involved in the writer's process throughout their degrees. And if they've missed something in that 13-week mandatory first semester writing course, that we provided along the way. So for Collins, he's thinking about writing that helps students develop personal stake in their academic writing projects, to ground academic work in their concerns and the concerns of their communities. At Luther College, we have nonprofit sector network certificates, and a lot of our students, like I said, are involved in engaged learning projects. We're partnering with that group to bring more of that into a number of classrooms and connecting writing assignments directly to those community engaged learning opportunities, which we're finding just has a greater impact on student engagement with the writing process and quite frankly, like just better writing outcomes for the student and the instructor alike. And when we think about different reports about what good writers do at post-secondary writing, we often see some of these words come up about curiosity or resilience. Collins is building on that and adding these ideas about that agency and that hope. A lot of our students are really quite socially active. They're part of social justice movement. They're interested in getting involved in their community. And so my colleagues and I have been talking about activist versus academic writing, which Paul Wildman writes about quite often. And a colleague of mine was at the Humanities Congress in Canada a few months ago. I guess that was just last month. And there was really a lot of talks that he was attending about activist writing on one hand, and then he'd attend another talk or two in religious studies, for example, and there would be people trying to downplay the importance of service in our academic work to get back to a certain level of like objectivity. And I think for Wildman and for me, I don't think there needs to be this complete separation between the activist and the academic. So for Wildman, the activist understands reality through experiencing and acting in it, the academic by reflecting on it. And we do a lot of work on decolonization and Indigenous engagement here at the University of Regina. And a lot of what I'm talking about in these realms is sort of antithetical to doing that work of decolonization, right? It's almost like a foreign concept for someone to be like detached personally from their academic writing. So for Wildman, it's the abstract versus the experienced. Academics tend towards the former and activists towards the latter. Activist writing may be labeled what he would call pracademic. It's, this practicality part of it, it takes place after the action creates further action, where you're seeing the traditional academic writing style as the opposite to that. So this results in action and personal investment for the activist and impartiality and ambivalence for the academic, which is, something oftentimes in my career I've wrestled with in terms of what's that impact that we're having out in the real world. So if as academic writers and teachers of writing, I think we can do a little bit more to get the personal and the action part into our writing, into our teaching, and have those impacts on people in our community. And that's something that Kai Askins talks about in an article called "That's Just What I Do: Placing Emotion in Academic Activism." It's really this idea about not having these things in separate spheres, or not having to worry so much about how emotions inform that academic project. You know, keeping ethics in mind, but not seeing emotion as a bad word. So she was doing research into refugee and asylum seekers in Northeast England, and was really quite concerned about the power dynamic in these relationships, taking advantage of participants in her study. And so she was shifting from a participatory research model to a more activist research mindset. Again, in terms of indigenizing curriculums or working with, here in Saskatchewan, Indigenous populations, this is like front of mind for researchers, hopefully, and is like becoming more and more apparent that this is how the mindset should be. So that lack of emotion in the writing and research didn't match the day-to-day relations that Askins was having while she was building those relationships and volunteering. We think a lot about how if we have research participation from different communities, that we're not just sort of arriving on scene and then disappearing after we've gotten the information that we need. There's an ongoing act of care and of relationship and of communication. So there's a sense here about resisting normalized academic structures of writing. I find when I talk to my students about this directly and try to like demystify academic writing in certain ways, this comes up. They have things to say and they have opinions, and I think are sometimes so set in terms of like the rigidity of the rules that they've been taught that they don't feel like they can insert themselves into a conversation. Opinion ends up being a negative when they get to university, and we have to sort of take some time to say, like, you can make arguments and it is your opinion. You just need to support it with evidence and some good writing skills. So Askins noted the paradox facing feminist academics being restricted by generic limitations in a more patriarchal academic writing style. She wanted to, quote, adopt a narrative style that endeavored to disrupt or challenge or question dominant writing construction, which I think is worth thinking about, the ideas there of disruption. And she really took some time to follow Alen Sixu's ideas about writing as a, quote, call to action, revolution, and transgression. So I was working with women and gender studies, religious studies prof who teaches courses on feminisms and activism, who teaches courses on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And so this idea about calls to action in academic writing and her some of my English research is in like transgressive fiction, and we talk a lot of, her and I talk a lot about like the power of writing to be able to do that. How, if students feel a little bit hopeless in terms of a topic or things are moving in a certain way politically, how can we motivate them to feel like they can have some sort of impact and influence, even if they're just undergraduate students and they feel like they're not capable of that. We really try to empower them and say, you can do amazing things. So Askins says, when I'm lecturing, facilitating seminars, seeing students as guidance tutor, dissertation supervisor, all these roles that people play as professors, I have my body, my emotions, my subjectivity, and subjectivities with me too, as much as when I'm activist researching. So she was finding this, compartmentalizing these different parts of one's personality troubling. My passion for social and environmental justice isn't switched off in the classroom or the office, as it feeds through my personal life, so it feeds through learning and teaching approaches. We see this sometimes happen when we're talking about course evaluations, et cetera, and then the problems with those. There's certainly like personal attacks that students make in those documents, but I think in a lot of times our syllabus and how we write those and how we craft our policies, that really is reflective of us. And so I think all of these writers, researchers are talking about what Askin's talking about in terms of creating text rich with feeling. So whether our students are writing about a cause or a movement dear to them, working on a project for a local nonprofit, which I'll talk about in a second, you know, we're trying more, or I'm trying more to ask them not to shy away from establishing ideas of resistance, motivations, processes, and accomplishments with, you know, vivid language choices and emotion, while still trying to balance the certain conventions within certain academic disciplines. So I'd say they're not just entering into a community of scholars, but joining an activist movements. They're meeting people who are full of, you know, have inspiring stories. They have, you know, heard some calls to action and are getting involved. They're creating change and hope within communities that may be marginalized. And so constantly just having them join these little rebellions, have that passion, and just sort of being, you know, facilitate that in a way where we give them the tools to be able to do that in ways that are, you know, useful for public consumption, but also useful here at the university. So just quickly about a particular class where we used these ideas and tried to develop something writing across the disciplines, collaboration with Dr. Brenda Anderson here at Luther College. This was Women and Gender Studies 206, Feminism and Activism. I have a background in public policy writing and a little bit in terms of creative writing. We really thought that students should be given choice, as those meaningful writing assignment researchers talk about. And we thought that with public policy path or a creative writing path, students could still do these things, identify problems, reflect on those issues, and offer solutions that are inspired by or related to the volunteering, activism-based experiential learning, and Dr. Anderson's course content. So they seem like very different paths, but they're about that, like seeing a problem in the world and then trying to comment on it or change it, or whether it's a policy document or a piece of fiction or creative nonfiction that the organization they're working with could, you know, publish on their website, or just, you know, have an event to have people talk about this, bring ideas towards it. So we did activism and volunteer opportunities with the Saskatchewan Seniors Mechanism. It's an umbrella group of nonprofits helping out seniors in our community. The John Howard Society is all about helping people with legal support. Open Door Society of Regina is a group that helps immigrants new to Canada integrate into, you know, getting things like language supports and other things. Work with Planned Parenthood Regina, developing policy documents about sexual assault or harassment policies on campus. Also changes to smudging and other campus rules on Indigenous ceremonies, which are quite restricted. Campaigns to end period stigma, and health and well-being programs designs for the city of Regina. So students were able to, you know, think about their audience and develop things for these organizations, and in collaboration with these organizations, which we found really—
Scott, I
Yes.
hate to interrupt, but if you could wrap it up in the next minute or so, that would be great.
Certainly, sorry about that.
Thank you.
So we had this, like, just a couple like student comments from the questionnaire we gave at the end of the course. One student said they learned to formulate opinions, improved on formulating writing in an organized way. There's some words here about confidence, and, you know, just having these one-on-one conversations with instructors and peers were more useful than the full class instruction. And just quite frankly, overall, I think this these types of projects end up hitting these three boxes of student agency, engagement with instructors, et cetera, and learning that connects to passions currently, but also like future workplace and career goals and learning goals. Thank you for your time. You can always get me at scott.j.wilson@uregina.ca.
Thank you so much, Professor.
But I have 15 minutes. I have some access copies. If you're interested in them, I only have a couple, but if you need one, I'll have those passed around. Since this round started late, but while I get set up, feel free to like stand up, do a quick stretch. Yeah.
A quick timing update. The session was scheduled to end at 2:45. Next session is scheduled to start at 3. It wouldn't surprise me if everything from here on out just starts a few minutes late, but I don't have that confirmed. But if you are like speaking at the next session and need to jet, then that's understandable. And we probably will skip the Q&A, but I mean, if you're willing to stick around, I'm willing to hang out just in the hallway and answer any questions that people may have.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Allison Rutina. I recently graduated from Muhlenberg College just a couple weeks ago, actually with my bachelor's in theater and Spanish. Oh, am I not sharing? Sorry. Great, no worries. So I recently graduated. The QR code, that's access to my slides, and then there are access copies around with the script. And yeah, it's just been wonderful, like being here and learning from all of you and learning from my fellow presenters. So today I'm going to be talking about research I did on Muhlenberg's first year seminar program in my senior year. And I'm really going to focus on, my research was focused on understanding how to create consistency for students in a first year seminar program without limiting faculty autonomy in a program that really values variety and professor autonomy. So first, just a little bit about Muhlenberg. Oh, and this isn't working. Yeah. Great, thank you. So Muhlenberg College is a small liberal arts college located in Allentown, Pennsylvania, with approximately 2,000 undergraduate students. It's in recent years dropped a little bit below that even. And at Muhlenberg, first year seminars are discussion-oriented courses, writing intensive courses required for all first year students and capped at an enrollment of 16. The first year seminars allow faculty from across all disciplines to teach a subject of their choosing, so long as it's taught through discussion-based writing intensive courses. But the subjects range all over the place, from how tea changed the world, to the ethics and aesthetics of global pop, to the idea of wilderness, with between 30 to 45 course offerings per year that students have the ability to choose from. These courses are taught by full-time faculty across the disciplines, and approximately half of the faculty on campus are involved in the program on a regular basis. So for example, for Muhlenberg, that means 87 different professors have taught a first year seminar in the past 5 years. You might be wondering, what was my way into this study? So in my first year at Muhlenberg, I trained to become a writing tutor. So one of the elements of Muhlenberg's first year seminar program is the writing assistant. And so once trained, writing tutors can be selected for a first year seminar. And then they attend that class period, participate in discussion around the material, work with the professor to formulate writing assignments, lead writing workshops, and meet with students outside of class tutoring. And so for me, being a part of the fabric of Muhlenberg's first year seminar, I had the opportunity to learn about these courses and consider how they were shaping college writers. I began thinking more deeply about the first year seminar program at the start of my junior year because several of my closest friends were writing assistants as well. And we would talk about the seminars we worked in outside of class. And I began to note differences in our experiences, not only with the content of the course and the professor, of course, but also in the way that writing was being taught. Even my roommate would come home and should say, we did this today. And I'd say, that's nothing like what I'm doing in my first year seminar. So the dissonance here, of course, affected us as tutors, but I also started to wonder what the effects might be on students. So going into my senior year, I developed a research project to uncover what was going on in first year seminars, looking to really turn the light on through sharing faculty and student perspectives. So I interviewed 15 first year seminar faculty from across disciplines and 14 first year students. I asked faculty questions really surrounding the objectives of their course and about how they taught writing. And I asked students about what they were learning, specifically what they were learning about writing, and whether or not they felt their needs were met by their first year seminar course. The interviews with faculty shed light on what some faculty are doing really well in their first year seminars in order to teach writing and analytical skills, encouraging students to slow down, working with them on how to grapple with hard texts, helping students to push away their judgment reflexes, and working overall to decrease anxiety around writing through regular low stakes writing assignments. However, many faculty witnessed students struggle with reading assignments and writing assignments more than they had just a few years prior, before the pandemic, and worried more broadly about students' ability to engage with others in the classroom. They had noticed big changes in that as well. The interviews also shed light on the fact that many professors were looking for more guidance and communication with other writing faculty. Some worried that due to the autonomy of each professor to create their own first year seminar course, the faculty in the first year seminar don't collectively teach toward anything. Attention arose. Overall, faculty shared a desire for the creation of common learning goals alongside a strong resistance to control or standardization in a hierarchical form of any way. But both desires were firmly expressed. When I interviewed students, students tended to speak on their first year seminar in terms of emotions, how their professor or their writing assistant, the embedded tutor, made them feel, if they felt comfortable in the class, if they felt like they were met with kindness when they were struggling, or if they felt like on the first day the class went full steam ahead and left them behind. Chief concerns of the students in their writing seminar came down to three things: relationships, how connected did they feel to others in the course? Support, did they feel like they could make mistakes comfortably with writing or with other things? And did they receive help on the writing assignments when they needed it? And growth, did they feel like they were learning and improving and growing? In regards to the challenges of the pandemic, some students shared that they did little to no writing prior to college because of the interruptions in their high school experience, and all had varied, complicated high school social learning experiences, which aligned with how faculty noted less preparedness around reading and writing and also classroom engagement. While there were many takeaways from my interviews, a key finding that struck me was that the students who mentioned a strong connection with their professor, their writing assistant, or with the other students in their first year seminar were more able to explain to me what they were learning in terms of writing, compared to students who felt less emotionally invested. The students who felt that their first year seminar was a community were defining to me what analysis meant, or sharing how they had learned to delay judgment of a reading before fully understanding the argument, or learning how to engage with sources and integrate them into a paper, or how to develop their own voice. They were describing to me all these skills that the faculty who I interviewed had prioritized because they found their seminar to be a place where they were supported and challenged and growing and connected to the experience of others around them. This led me to understand that in order for students, first year students specifically, to be able to focus on writing, a focus on building a space for students to be present and engaged in the classroom needed to take forefront. While some faculty had mentioned reducing anxiety around writing, few had mentioned working to create a community within their classrooms out of all the professors I interviewed. So I decided to share my findings with the Muhlenberg first year seminar faculty and with members of the writing program committee of Muhlenberg College, emphasizing the relationship of how students engage with the classroom community in a first year seminar to the development of critical thinking and writing skills. In response to the desire expressed by faculty for updating and discussing the common learning goals of first year seminars, in my research presentation, I made the suggestion that developing an academic community could be one of these learning goals. A heated discussion arose. It became clear that while many professors do create community in the classrooms, some didn't realize that that's what they were doing. And the idea of it being a learning goal was immediately threatening. Some faculty saw community development as completely irrelevant to first year writing courses. Others defended that indeed developing an academic community was essential to the purpose of a first year seminar, a priority from which writing instruction could follow. The immediate rejection was focused on both how developing a community could become an accessible learning goal, and that faculty wouldn't know how to facilitate it, with a retort in the sense of, I'm supposed to teach community. These responses spurred a discussion about what it means to develop an academic community in a first year writing seminar, breaking it down from the admittedly abstract concept to productive, actionable ideas, both for professors and for students. We discussed that developing an academic community involves participation, engagement with others' ideas, emotional and cognitive scaffolding, otherwise known as challenge with support models, and an acknowledgement that first year students' experiences in the classroom involve more than solely the content of the course. By the end of the discussion, some faculty who initially rejected the idea of developing academic community in their classrooms realized they were already doing many of the practices needed to cultivate community. One professor excitedly shouted out, "I'm a fish in water," when someone pointed out that something he was doing in his class was in fact developing community. And others learned new ways that they could put more focus on community of their first year seminar without dramatically increasing their workload. After the faculty discussion, I began working toward the formalization of a common learning goal around community and thinking about what that would look like. So I wanted to delve further into why building an academic community within a first year seminar is connected to writing, in the hope to eventually share more of that understanding with faculty at the college who are still hesitant. I found that including the development of academic community as a learning goal for first year seminar is related to an issue brought up in Neil Lerner's Reformers, Teachers, Writers, Curricular and Pedagogical Inquiries, which addresses this issue that student development not be solely pedagogical, but that curriculum itself should address students' writing development. In fact, Lerner argues the development of writing process and embodied experience within the classroom should take forefront over the proficiency of writing products in a writing seminar. And the best way to be sure that those student needs are being met is to ask the students themselves. So the student voices matter there. In other words, prioritizing students' emotional and academic needs in terms of their development belongs in the writing curriculum. And this is especially important when talking about first year writing, students in their first semester of college. Class discussions within these first year seminars are opportunities for normal discourse, allowing students to develop and grow their academic identity. The first time a student tosses around what might become their thesis often happens in class discussions, integrating ideas from their peers and building off of each other using evidence from the text as a grounding point. If we consider a first year seminar where a student's afraid to speak up or who comes in and recites a comment about the reading but doesn't pick up with and engage others' ideas, versus a seminar where a student feels supported and connected to their peers, one of these spaces allows the student to share ideas and develop them in a group setting before going to write about them on their own. Additionally, in a seminar where there's a focus on writing, if a student can ask questions about the language and make mistakes while thoughtfully considering the texts of the course, they're more supported in understanding then how to go write for themselves. After the faculty workshop, The head of the writing program and the chair of the writing program committee met to develop and update clear learning goals for the first year seminar and to put them in writing. These goals put into writing the practices and ideas that both the best first year seminar faculty and those first year seminar professors who are less experienced can use to guide them in creating their courses, in developing their courses. There's a clear emphasis on idea exploration, dialogue, critical thinking, and building academic community. The goals were discussed by the writing program committee and sent out to faculty for input in March. And the goal around community development was still the most controversial, but there are plans for continued discussions over time with faculty. And the goals, all of the goals, including the one about community, were finalized and shared with the academic program committee at the end of this academic year, where they can be officially approved in the fall. It's clear that the development of personal connections in a first year seminar, learning how to engage in academic discussion with peers, especially in the wake of the pandemic, is directly connected to getting students to then engage with writing in a thoughtful, productive way. While the circumstances around first year writing courses might differ depending on the institution, evidence suggests attending to building academic community when teaching first year students writing results in improved learning of writing process and skills. Further, community development is something that many faculty implicitly understand and do well, but it is rarely named as a priority. Making clear its connection to better writing in learning goals, written learning goals, promotes continued conversations around how to better support students' learning through their first year. So then first year students may set forth into their college experience with a better understanding of college level writing habits and the habits of mind and practices that go along with it. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us for the time. Yeah, happy to chat in the hallway because I assume people need to get in this room. Thank you.